Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. Have a ton of news and rumors to run down today. Most of them trade related. Also, unfortunately, some COVID related news as well. Joining me as always is Keith Smith. You can find him on Twitter at Keith Smith NBA. Find me at Trevor_Lane. Keith, let's start things off in Brooklyn with Kyrie Irving. Yesterday, we talked a little bit about how the Nets are hoping that Kyrie could make a return this season, that there is renewed optimism. But what we didn't discuss was that there's also the sentiment out there that if he isn't able to return by the time the trade deadline creeps a little bit closer, they could be looking at a Kyrie Irving trade, and other teams have begun to inquire about that. What do you think? Kyrie maybe getting traded by the Nets?
Yeah, my guess is no.
Yeah.
Still, I can't see it ultimately happening. But I think what's interesting is the idea of that they're not saying no to this entirely. That they are at least semi-open to talking about it. It sounds like this is another one of those. They're not necessarily making the calls, but if teams are asking, they're not being immediately told go away, like I would presume they are with Kevin Durant. So yeah, I think we'll see, where that goes, from here. But my guess is, I'm gonna say we don't see Kyrie play at all this season for anybody. He just misses the entire year.
We have a little bit of breaking news, Keith.
Yeah.
Shams Charania, Lakers guard Talen Horton-Tucker has entered health and safety protocols and could miss multiple games. And the Lakers, this was one of our other talking points here, was Lakers canceled practice. So obviously we'll address this a little bit more when we get to that topic, but something that did just pop up on our timelines here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we'll get to it when we get to that topic.
But obviously, I do agree as far as the Nets probably not trading Kyrie, but it's something that they have to consider. And here's the thing, like front offices around the NBA, if they're not exploring multiple opportunities, multiple paths all season long, they're not doing their job. So this isn't like saying the Nets are trying to trade Kyrie. It's just you always have to be planning for the future and figuring out, okay, maybe we'll have this option. Maybe we can go through this door, that door, whatever. That's just what front offices have to do in order to do their jobs effectively. So they have to consider the possibility. Again, I wouldn't say it's likely, but it's something that the Nets have to at least not totally close the door on, just in case that's the path they wind up having to go down.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Seth Partnow the other day on Twitter, Seth used to work for the Milwaukee Bucks. He's one of the kind of leaders in the space of analytics and basketball. Seth made a great point of we go too far with how many players are untouchable on rosters, that there's probably, I think his list was, I want to say it was like 7 or 8 guys long. Yeah. But there's probably less than 10 truly untouchable players. And we're talking untouchable for good reasons, meaning their teams would be like, no, you can't trade for him. Everybody else is probably different levels of, all right, blow us away with an offer and we're willing to listen. And I think that's good. Bill Simmons back in the day used to always run his annual trade value column where he would rank the players, and it was basically anybody from, number 1, that guy's not getting traded for anybody. Number 2, nobody except for number 1. And then number 3, nobody except for 2 and 1, and on you went. So I think that's sometimes what we have to think of it. And when it's a big name like Kyrie, yeah, it's highly unlikely that would get done. And that's before you get into all the other stuff that he hasn't played this year. He may not play this year, those kind of things. It's unlikely, but I don't think it is a complete shut it down. Absolutely not. And as you said, the Nets are, they're trying to win a championship. And if the end goal is, or we can win a championship while making sure Kevin Durant stays happy and willing to stay in Brooklyn, well, then what do we have to do? Let's use this to kind of transition into the James Harden stuff that was in there. A lot of things we're going to cover today came out of Jake Fisher's reporting over at Bleacher Report. He reported that there's still some thought out there of James Harden to the 76ers, whether that be now or in the offseason. As we remember, Harden did not sign an extension. He's going to probably opt out of his contract, hit the free agent route, add a whole bunch of money, or opt in and sign the extension next year. He's got a bunch of different ways he can play this out. Or there's a thought that Jake Fisher's floating out there that some still think there's possibility he could end up with the Philadelphia 76ers, which is, I mean, clearly that's Daryl Morey's guy, right? I mean, he built an entire franchise around James Harden. I think he would love to do that again with Joel Embiid. Right there is the 1-1A partner for Harden, which is well, I don't want to knock down Chris Paul or Russell Westbrook, but for terms of in their prime players, Joel Embiid would be the best player James Harden has played with under Morey, because obviously Kevin Durant right now
Yeah.
is the guy, and I don't want to go all the way back to when Harden was a young guy with the Thunder and those kind of things, but in their prime players, Harden and Embiid, yeah, that'd be a pretty tough matchup.
And so these are the types of dominoes that the 76ers are waiting for. They're waiting to see if something happens on these fronts so that they can swoop in and say, hey, we'll give you a Ben Simmons for that. But that's part of the reason why we haven't seen a Simmons deal done just yet, because
Correct.
you'd rather go get a James Harden than take a package of players from, say, Minnesota or something like that.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. They're gonna hold out as long as they can. If they can get that star, that's the way they clearly want to play this.
Nick Claxton apparently could also become available from the Brooklyn Nets, again, according to that Jake Fisher report. I mean, I don't know how much interest he'll have. He's a young player. He's got some talent. I think that teams would be interested in him, but I guess I don't know what the asking price would be from the Brooklyn Nets in that situation.
Yeah, the challenge is his salary is a minimum
That's the
salary,
problem.
so it's not going to return all that much for the Nets in terms of matching salary. I think that is more along the lines of they just got Daron Sharp at last year's draft. I think they feel very comfortable that as long as they're in this Durant centric window, they'll cobble together Big Ben, veteran bigs on the minimum or for part of an exception or something. So do they really want to lock in a paying Claxton when he's a free agent this summer? What he's worth. So I think that's probably more what's driving, hey, we're open to this. But what that could do is that could be a, hey, we want to get player X. We'll give you Nick Claxton to try to juice the package a little bit. Because Nick Claxton's a player I like quite a bit. I think he's actually pretty good. And I think he has a chance of being a pretty good center if he gets regular playing time for Brooklyn. The one that was a big surprise to me out of this report is Joe Harris, that the Nets are listening on there. Now the Nets we've talked about this quite a bit with the Lakers. The Lakers don't have those mid-range tradable contracts.
Right.
It's basically Talon Horton Tucker and that's it. The Joe Harris is that mid-range tradable contract for the Nets, but he's also a really important player for them when he plays, because he's a guy who doesn't need the ball but can knock down shots all day long. So he kind of fits perfectly in with the rest of the guys on that team. But again, if that's a way to get to, a star guy, if somebody shook free, I mean, I guess, you could throw Joe Harrison in the mix in a deal and, again, plus up the package that way, because despite the injury right now, he's a guy who that should be fine. 17 million this year, 18 million, 19, almost 20 million in 23, 24 is last year. That's probably going to be a slight overpay in those last couple of years maybe, but not bad for a guy who can shoot the ball the way he can.
Absolutely. Teams are always looking for shooting, and he is one of the very best in the NBA. So if you can go get him, maybe there'll be teams they'll be interested in that. Again, I'm surprised that the Nets would consider moving him as well. But if something really enticing pops up and that's the price they have to pay, maybe they go ahead and do it. We'll see. Let's jump to, well, unfortunately, I hate this part. Health and safety protocol. The Nets have announced that LaMarcus Aldridge, Paul Millsap, Javon Carter, DeAndre Bembry, James Johnson, all in health and safety protocols. And then we just, of course, got the Talen Horton-Tucker news. The Lakers canceled practice due to that. There have been a number of other players around the NBA. Of course, we know what's going on with the Chicago Bulls. Not great.
Yeah, after we recorded.
Yes, right after we recorded.
We're like, we'll see if they actually cancel these games or not. They postponed 2 games.
Yep.
So,
Postponed.
yeah, I mean, it's bad right now. And from people I've talked to, not entirely unexpected. A lot of people were looking at this as, all right, we're going to have some stuff here. They increased testing after Thanksgiving, knowing players would be getting together and gathering with family and friends over the Thanksgiving holiday. So we'll see how many more guys get caught in this. The league is continuing to push that players get the booster shots. Yep. That should provide an extra layer of protection for them. But we're seeing these kind of breakthrough positive tests all over the place place, even in people who have been vaccinated. So fortunately, in most cases, it seems like people don't get overly sick and they're doing pretty good. So that's something to kind of factor in here. But yeah, we're going to keep seeing this. This is going to continue probably until we're well into the spring, if not for the remainder of the season.
So let me ask you about this, though. We saw not only did the Chicago Bulls get 2 games postponed, their game against the Lakers coming up next Sunday got pushed back about 5 hours. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my guess is that was just to give a little bit more time
For testing.
that if they take tests in the morning and they come back negative, that then they can play that night. Whereas if you're going to play at what would have been that game was in LA, right? So there would have been a 12:30 local time tip. So that would have been, you're asking guys then to get up and go get tested probably at like 6 in the morning. I don't know what the travel was prior to that for the Bulls. So my guess is the hope there is we're going to cancel these other 2 games, let them get to LA, then we'll push that game back and kind of the more normal NBA window and go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That was my take as well. Just curious what your thoughts were as to why they would have gone and pushed it back a little bit there. Hopefully the Bulls can clear health and safety protocols. Hopefully the Lakers do as well, and things will shake out there. But for the moment, this is something that the NBA is going to have to deal with. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Still no plans to shut down the season or anything like that. This is just something where they're going to have to weather the storm. Speaking of the Lakers, according to Jake Fisher, the Lakers have had internal discussions about potentially trading Russell Westbrook in terms of the fit maybe not coming together as quickly as they had hoped between LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook. Not a surprise, though, that it's not going to happen. Almost certainly, they're not going to trade him. Way too much money, $91-ish million owed over the next 2 seasons, including this season. So most likely a trade there's not going to happen. But again, you're not doing your job if you're not at least having these conversations and discussing what things would look like. Apparently, he was also a piece that they discussed with the 76ers in regards to a Ben Simmons trade, but he was not on the 76ers list of players that they'd be willing to take in a Ben Simmons deal. And so those discussions didn't go very far. Not surprising.
Yeah, Daryl Morey's been there, done that, right?
Yeah.
And that was, by all accounts, part of what drove the ultimate breakup with him and the Rockets was him not. Sorry, I have a very aggressive puppy chewing my shoe underneath my desk. He is really going after it too. Hey, come on, buddy, knock it off. That was really something that drove that breakup between Morey and the Rockets was the pressure to make the Westbrook trade in the first place. Doesn't sound like that was really maybe what he wanted to do. So no surprise there. Philly would also have to add salary in that they can't just trade Ben Simmons straight up. So anybody who's dreaming of Simmons for Westbrook straight up, it's not going to happen. You're also, Philly is certainly not going to throw in another player of value. Sorry, he's really going at my foot down here. So it's they are not going to do that. They're not going to give up in addition to that package. So you talk for a second. I'm going to go on mute and try to get things under control.
The NBA front office show. Come for the NBA trade talks and cap analysis, and stay for the puppy exploits that we get on the show.
All right, he's moved on. He's moved on. Oh man.
Oh, I would be dealing with the same thing, but fortunately, I am situated upstairs, and mine hasn't figured out how to do stairs yet. So he's out of the mix right for the moment. But and in any event, yeah, look, the Lakers and Ben Simmons. Obviously, Ben Simmons would love to be a Laker. He was a lifelong Laker fan. Grew up as a Lakers fan. Rich Paul obviously is his agent. Those things do matter. But again, you're not. The 76ers aren't going to be super excited about trading for Russell Westbrook in exchange for Ben Simmons. That's not ideally what they want. You're perpetuating some of the problems that you've got with Ben Simmons in terms of the lack of shooting. If you go get Westbrook, not to mention the age factor and all of those sorts of things. So you're talking about a scenario where the Lakers would have to send Westbrook to a third team, and that team would have to want Westbrook and want to send good stuff back to the 76ers. And it's extremely unlikely for something like that to happen. But again, the Lakers as an organization, they're not doing their job if they're not exploring these things. So it's something they have to talk about.
And I do think it's interesting and telling that maybe this Westbrook thing becomes a 1-year thing for the
Mhm.
Lakers. Maybe, this offseason, far easier to move him. But then is he will likely opt out and transition, or opt in rather, but transition to a expiring contract. So we'll see where that goes with him. So we'll see. But that's more of my takeaway
Mhm.
now, is that's probably more telling that we're probably just about done or this will probably not just about done. I shouldn't phrase it that way. We're in a 1-year relationship here that will be very, very heavily reevaluated. Now, if it all clicks, they go on to win a whole bunch of games
Sure.
and contend for the title. Of course, everything can change. We're starting to get mounting evidence that that's probably not going to be the
Well,
case.
and I will say, in recent weeks, Westbrook has played a lot better. From somebody who
Yes,
watches every single minute of every game, he's looked like a different player compared to what we saw at
agree.
the beginning of the season. That it still doesn't make him the best fit, but it's not like a total lost cause either at this point. When at one point it looked like that was the path we were heading down for certain. We'll see where things go from here, but yeah, I mean, it's a conversation that they have to be having internally, frankly.
Yep.
Uh, Chris Middleton, let's jump over to the reigning defending champs, the Milwaukee Bucks. Chris Middleton dealing with a knee injury. Now, there is some optimism that it isn't a serious injury, but still something with a player that's that important, particularly to the defending champions, that could wind up being a pretty big deal for the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, and that happened or not after, during the Celtics game last night in Boston. The Celtics, back from their horrific road trip, they really took it to the Bucks in the second half and handled them kind of with ease for the majority of the second half. So this guy is driving me nuts today under here. But he is, Middleton landed awkwardly on a rebound and hyperextended his left knee. Didn't look great. He tried to initially run it off. Then the Bucks came down. I believe they missed a shot or turned it over. And then, even though there was about 30 seconds to play in the quarter and the Celtics were in the bonus, Middleton gave a foul to get out of the game. And that's how you knew it was bad.
Yeah.
Because he just came up, fouled Dennis Schroeder, put him at the line, gave away 2 points, and immediately walked off to the locker room. And at that point, it was probably maybe 5-10 minutes later, probably not even, probably closer to 5. The Bucks announced he was going to be out. But post game, Mike Budenholzer said they have hope he avoided serious injury, and let's hope that's the case.
Absolutely. Something where we got to hope that that he is indeed okay. Sometimes there's stuff where you get hurt in the moment, it's scary, and then later on it turns out that it's not as bad as you had feared. I mean, we've certainly dealt with
Yeah,
things like that before. I hope that's the
it's
way this
interesting you
goes.
say that, because Jaylen Brown had that same thing in the opening minutes of that game. He's just back. He missed the entirety of the road trip, just back off the hamstring strain for the second time now. And he drove the baseline and banged knees with Bobby Portis. And it wasn't clear exactly what had happened on the instant replay,
Hmm.
but then he landed and then wouldn't put any weight on his left leg and hopped off to the bench. And then it was just, he's like, banged knees. It was sore for a second, and then it was all okay. And he came back in and looked fine. Just as an aside, he looks healthy now. When he returned the first time from the hamstring injury, never looked good. Didn't look explosive. Didn't look like he trusts the leg at all. And now he's looking pretty solid.
Well, that's certainly good to hear. And like you said, there are certainly these moments where players can get hurt and you fear the worst, and then it turns out everything is
Exactly.
okay. And so we're always keeping our fingers
Yep.
crossed that that's what happens.
Yep.
Let's talk Sacramento Kings a little bit. There's a phrase we don't say very often, but let's talk Sacramento Kings a little bit. The rumor is the Kings are shopping the package of Marvin Bagley and Buddy Hield. Not a surprise that either one of them are on the trade block. Marvin Bagley is an obvious guy that's been rumored to be on the block for a while. Buddy Hield, the Kings almost traded him last offseason.
Mhm.
But the Kings specifically are trying to put the two of them together in trade packages to go out and land somebody that's going to help them make a real push. They're right now sitting in 11th in the Western Conference, just one game out of the play-in tournament. And despite how poorly things have gone so far this season for them, they want to make a push to get themselves into the mix.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see the Kings start trading away multiple first round picks and things like that
Sure.
just to get into the play-in tournament. But if you can make a trade of guys who probably aren't part of your long-term future, clearly Bagley is not healed. It's really starting to feel that way too. Why not, right? Because just getting into the play-in, that's at least somewhat of a win for them. And if things go right in the play-in, next thing you know, you're a playoff team and off you go.
Right.
So, yeah, I found this kind of an interesting report. That's about $34 million, $34.4 million in expiring salary, or not a tradable salary, rather. Bagley is expiring. He's going to be a restricted free agent this offseason, or can be. And then Buddy Hield has 2 more years left at 21 and 19 million. So not bad. I look at it as
Who do you get
Bagley.
for that?
Yeah, I mean, right,
That's the
that's your
challenge.
salary match for Simmons, right? If
Sure.
now you're probably gonna have to plus that up with, picks and other stuff, because it's not enough
No.
clearly to go get Ben Simmons. But or is that enough for maybe another? You route that to a third team, which sends
Mhm.
something on to Simmons, so maybe the Kings still get involved there. I don't know that I love the Simmons fit with that Sacramento team. I don't know if they have enough shooting to offset what he does, especially if Buddy Hield's not going to be there anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's something at least. It
Mhm.
or that gets you a couple good players, a couple $15 million players or something like that. If that's where you want to go, Bagley, that's the easy one, right? We know he's not part of things long term. I mean, they told him that, and then his agent proceeded to, burn down the bridges
Yep.
and, as they say, pee all over the ashes too. And then Buddy Hield it feels like he's been on the trade block for a couple years now, at least, even after they re-signed him to the contract extension that they gave him. But then they draft Davion Mitchell after drafting Tyrese Halliburton. You still have De'Aaron Fox. It just doesn't necessarily fit for Hield because you're not big enough or good enough defensively to play those 3 guard groups with those guys
Yeah.
together. So that's why I think he's kind of the one on the outs there. So let's see where that goes. With that one, but something to keep an eye on with Sacramento at least. My guess is something happens there
Yeah,
by the trade
I
deadline.
agree. I think they're motivated to make something happen. I'm just drawing a blank or having a hard time coming up
Sure.
with for what. But it's
You know
enough.
what it
It's enough
is? It's
money to
because there's
make
just
something
not
happen.
sellers, right?
Yeah,
There's
there's
not
not a
sellers
lot.
to go find easy. Now what I mean,
That
the
may
last
change
thing
by the deadline, though.
exactly, absolutely. And the last thing the Kings need is another big man, but that could get you like Terrence Ross and
Sure.
Robin Lopez. That puts you in the mix for those 2 guys, for sure. I don't think there's anything to match on the Thunder, really, or the Rockets. That makes a lot of
I
sense.
mean,
So I
are
don't
we
know.
talking Sabonis? Like, is that? I don't even know. And
Maybe,
if you're the Pacers, like part of the
maybe.
reason why you're looking at making moves is to give a more solidified role to Chris Duarte, just bringing in Buddy Hield. It's just messy, no matter where
Yeah,
we're
I think you
looking.
would
But
want to double that down with a Karis LeVert deal too, and then
sure.
maybe roll with Brogdon, Hield, Duarte, Turner, and I don't know, maybe give Bagley some minutes just to see what it looks like.
Hmm.
It's not awful,
No,
I mean, it's worth giving a shot to, I guess.
this is really the kind of thing that you just file it away,
Yep,
and things may become a bit more clear as we get closer and closer to the deadline. Exactly who's on the market, who's a seller, who's a buyer. That's that sort of thing. Again, not a surprise those 2 guys are on the market. I would expect
sure,
them to probably get moved, but it's just not clear exactly where they would go just
exactly.
yet.
Yep.
Um, let's talk a little bit. Another surprising team, the Rockets. The Rockets are looking for a roster spot to convert Garrison Matthews. He's jumped into the starting lineup for them recently and has been productive. He's on a 2-way contract right now. The Rockets want to try to clear a roster spot in order to give him a full-time spot. Now, I mean, no surprise now that he is a starter and he's been performing for them.
Yeah, now we're in the 3rd year in a row of this happening with Garrison Matthews,
Yeah.
because he did this on 2-way contracts with the Washington Wizards as well, and now slightly different last year, right? Because you had the different rules, so he's able to play in the playoffs for the Wizards last season. But last year, by the end of the season, he was a starter. But as a 2-way player as a rookie, 41% from three. Last year, 64 games played. Now remember, shortened season, so he played in the bulk of the games. 24 starts, all of which came down the stretch, including in the playoffs. And 38% from three. This year with the Rockets, 14 games played, 9 starts, 38.8% from three. So this guy can shoot.
Absolutely.
What's disappointing for this guy personally is Boston had him in training camp. The team desperately needs shooting in the worst way. And they basically, their hope was, hey, will you take the second two-way spot that we have open, where we would like you to have on that? And he was like, yeah, I don't think so. Because if I'm going to do a two-way, I want it with a real path to make a roster.
Right.
So he asked for his release versus taking the two-way. But the real choice was they kept Jabari Parker over Garrison Matthews. And that's, I mean, I still believe in Jabari Parker. I probably shouldn't at this point, but I still think he's a guy who can score and do some things. But Garrison Matthews would actually fill the role for the Celtics. And now I'm not going to get too harsh on him because 28 other teams in this case missed, except for Houston. So yeah, clearing the roster spot, I don't know how they get there. My guess is probably an unbalanced trade at some point where they send out two guys and bring back one or something like that, or anything in that range, and that's how you clear one. Because there's no obvious guy you go to where you say, all right, there it is. There's the roster spot that opens up for Matthews. But yeah, Houston should do everything they can to kind of get him locked in.
I was definitely surprised there wasn't more of a market for him in the offseason, given how teams tend to flock towards shooters. He can definitely offer that, but for whatever reason, he hit the market. The Celtics had a shot at him, but everybody had a shot at him, and then ultimately lands with the Rockets. And good on him for continuing to battle, because that's not easy to go from being a starter with a team and then suddenly nobody's offering you deals when you played pretty well. That's got to be frustrating for him.
Hey, let's talk about a shooter though.
Yeah,
I think this guy.
Let's do it.
We're going to end the show. Might be pretty good.
Yeah,
Stephen Curry. He's all right. We're just going to end it just on an upbeat note. Should break the all-time NBA three-pointers made record tonight in New York. Kind of cool. Break a record in Madison Square Garden. That's pretty neat. I think he needs 2 to get there. So chances are he'll probably do that. Fairly early on. The Knicks are a little beat up and a little banged up. So let's see.
Did you see the news about the Warriors' flight to New York?
Yeah, I didn't get in until just a little bit ago.
Yeah. That's a little, I mean, normally teams fly in the night before or, early in the morning, the day of the game, right? So they'll get in at, 2 a.m. or something like that. The Warriors' flight was delayed. And so who knows how that will impact them. They're flying in a few hours, handful of hours before the game actually starts. So we'll see if that changes. Look, NBA players are creatures of habit. They're very much into their routines, and the Warriors' routine is going to be disrupted. Now, that doesn't mean I don't think he's going to break the record tonight or anything like that. I just think it's something to note as we do head into this game.
Yeah, it's just because you said that, he'll probably hit like 14 3-pointers.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Go absolutely bananas and all that. But yeah, it's I know it's a light night. Because of the cancel, there was only 4 games anyway, but because of the cancellation, there's only 3 games tonight. Raptors Nets, which is that one. If KD doesn't play, I don't know that there's a whole lot of reason to put that one on. So then you got Warriors Knicks and then Suns Trailblazers. So Warriors Knicks is might as well check that out. TNT 7:30. Maybe Steph
see some history.
8:00 breaks the record by 8. What do we think? Maybe
I think so. I think that'd be a good bet. All right. Well, everybody, we knew we had enough to get through today that we could probably knock it all out in one show. So this will probably be it for us today, unless something else happens. You never know in the world of the NBA. But we do appreciate.
You just clinched. We'll be doing the second show.
I jinxed it right there. But we do appreciate all the support that we've been getting, all the new subscribers we've been seeing. Please make sure if you're not subscribed yet, you do hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on notifications as well. That way you get notified every time we put out a new video. Thanks, everybody. See ya, and stay safe.